Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Adulting in the Modern World. I am here with Sahar, Joya, and Donna Poulidis, and we would love to talk to you today or to have a discussion amongst us on how to cope with these moments of uncertainty and whatever is happening around the world, and how we've been managing to keep our space and to keep us grounded and to keep us motivated to care about our loved ones and our entourage and our clients and our environment within these situations. So I would like to pass on the conversation to Sahar, because what would be interesting to know is her point of view and her way of coping with whatever is going on, especially in Afghanistan, and to see how she has been coping with her sense of belonging, with the sense of helplessness and hopelessness, because whatever is going on right now in Afghanistan, especially, has been quite devastating for everyone, and especially for women. So, Sahar, would you like to share a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm grateful to be back. As you know, I've been taking some time off to do some self-care. And regardless of kind of what's going on politically, globally, I think that every single one of us right now feels the pressure because we are on this one planet. And so the collective energy, if there's a lot of chaos, trauma, all of that, that's like exploding right now. I'm sure wherever you are, you're probably feeling it too. And so that's why I took some time off to kind of do some soul searching, do some healing. There was like alerts through my health that kind of came up. And then recently, as you may have heard in the news, that the US and NATO have pulled out of Afghanistan, and so there's been the Taliban takeover, and so it's like a really re-triggering time for many Afghans and Afghan diaspora communities as well, because the government of the US said that they were going to do the pullout basically on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So that is like a very traumatic kind of emotion that, like, it's hard to explain through the brain, but it's just a feeling that you're like, whoa, 20 years later, this is like, we're going to have a return back to what was going on 20 years ago. But for me personally, even though I studied international development, just so I could understand my family's roots, I could understand history, I could understand why we were displaced. I feel like now, this time around, I'm able to manage my emotions better. I'm able to kind of handle the news in a different way. And so one of the things that I really wanted to share with, community at large, but also the Afghan diaspora community, is how to witness suffering and not, like, to be mindful of our own root triggers of our trauma, but also how to have trauma informed like care practices, so that we can kind of navigate life and not be crippled down by the bearing weight of the suffering that we witness on our Instagrams, reels, on your TV screens, and all of that. So in terms of telling the story, I just want to kind of set up to say that, as one of the things that we're doing to create a more trauma-informed space here, is when we thought about recording this episode, we said, what can we bring to our community so that it can be healing versus just re-triggering the trauma? And we've shared in previous episodes about, and to bring spirituality and vibrations and emotion into it. If you're in the energy of fear, if we're seeing a lot of those things, we have mirror neurons. And so when we see the amount of deaths that we're seeing on TV or on our Instagram or social media has never been a thing 20, 30 years ago. So we're registering so much information in our subconscious mind that we don't even know how this is impacting us, from a stress level, from a secondary stress, secondary trauma level. So Donna is going to be sharing a breathing technique, and I think it's a sound technique. Donna could share about it some more afterwards, but that's just one of the tools that we wanted to offer today, as a way of coping, as a tool to use in your day-to-day to kind of get yourself back together, literally, right?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sahar. Your journey has been quite inspiring. And thank you also for sharing a very difficult thing to share and to put words to. And if I hear you right, is that you faced reality. So on the daily basis, you do face reality as it is, as raw as it is, and you cope within the circumstances, knowing the reality, to detach emotionally and trying to put your emotions into something more productive, something more of a service, or something more of for example, like your own self-growth. Correct me if
Well,
I'm...
yeah, and it's your life mission, right? So like if suffering wakes us up from a spirituality perspective, suffering wakes us up. My family being displaced in Afghanistan, me never being able to set foot on that country's land has really been hard on my heart, especially in my 20s. It was very difficult. Because it was very difficult post 9/11, where a lot of people were like, go back to your country. And like, they didn't realize the impact of that pain for Afghans who were displaced. So something that I really want to share from a displaced Afghan person is that you have to be aware that like when we come to immigrate to these countries, it's not that, you know, a lot of people, there's a lot of racism, there's a lot of discrimination. I had to suffer a decade when people asked me like, oh, you look so exotic, where are you from? And the moment I would say Afghanistan, because they saw it in the news, they would like automatically be like, oh, is Osama your dad? And like, you know, like there wasn't a sensitivity to how much that can actually hurt somebody, and a sense of belonging. So I was born as a refugee, and because my family had to leave Afghanistan, and right now that's happening to a lot of people, and it's been happening to a lot of people. So I'm super aware of the displacement through war, through famine, through poverty that's going on in the world. And so the way that I deal with that awareness of like knowing I have my piece of that suffering, but then there's like a whole global collective suffering, the way that I make it be productive is by thinking big picture, like my life mission. What am I devoting my life to? What am I devoting my soul and spirit to? And how can I do it in a way where they say on the plane, like you put on your oxygen mask first and then you help out others? That to me is very critical as well, because if I don't have a healthy foundation to be able to stand on, how am I going to be able to help others? And so in my 20s, I used to like really get depressed through like reading about injustices around the world. And I would like just go into my bed and curl up. And that's how I dealt with the heaviness of the emotions. And I still do sometimes feel that way. I still will go into my bed and I'll still cope, you know, in these other ways. And I think it's so I don't want to shame and judge people's coping mechanisms when they're going through intense trauma like this. I know that we're a platform for health and wellness, and so we do want to promote and offer healthy tools and mechanisms to be able to deal with that, but also just no judgment and shame to people who have to, you know, resort to alcohol or drugs or whatever, like, because that's just what they feel like they have at that time to be able to deal with it, if that makes sense. But for me, I took the path a decade ago to commit to my healing, to say, you know what, I know that this is a really painful thing for me and I can't go forward. So I need to figure out how to heal. I need to figure out how to find a sense of belonging on this planet as a refugee, as somebody who, you know, I'm aware of the Canadian nation state that I'm in, and I'm aware of like me impacting, you know, Indigenous communities out here and being part of that whole nation building. But the way that I feel like I help and I support is doing my own work, healing myself, healing those people around me in terms of, you know, just being present, calling my mom. How are you doing? How are you doing with watching this news? Is it triggering you? Like, just being able to have those conversations is a huge milestone for a lot of people, because when you're traumatized, your ability to bond and connect with people in a healthy way gets diminished quite a bit, because you're in a state of fear or like fight or flight, literally.
Beautiful listening to you, and it brings hope to a lot of other women as well, and a lot of learning.
So I want to add to say so I'm a child of parents that had to flee the country. So they were the ones that like wore a lot of the burden of leaving home and leaving their land and all of that. So one of the things I want to say to the diaspora community is about survival guilt. So if you survive and you watch all these people that are suffering and are still in the country, still in that state, one of the things that we can go into is feeling shame and guilt for surviving, shame and guilt for having the luxuries that we have in our lives at the moment. So I just want to kind of touch on that a little bit, as well as that I don't know how to navigate that. I'm not an expert to necessarily talk about it, but just from my own perspective and just within, sisterhood and community, is to really be mindful of that. Be mindful of if you're experiencing survival guilt and feeling shame and blame for the fact that you're alive and well. Because sometimes we don't engage in wellness practices because we feel guilty that, like, why should I be experiencing health and wellness when somebody else is in an extreme state of suffering? So I just don't feel like that's an answer to addressing social justice issues, if that makes sense. And I know it's a very hard thing to say, but that's where the healing piece comes into social justice of like self-care. And I know like bell hooks and stuff talks about self-care as radical practice. Audre Lorde had talked about self-care as a very political, radical practice. And so for a lot of people, they might be like, oh, self-care, like, you think this is a time for self-care when there's so much going on in the world? But all the more so, yes.
That is really important. It is really important because we should understand also that we have a limit of what we can do and we are able to control. And there are some things, unfortunately, much bigger than us that are happening in the whole world. We all do individually whatever we can, but we should understand our limits as well. And it's very well said, Sahar. I mean, falling into the guilt feeling that we have survived or we're living better than the others is just at this point does not serve anyone, but also destroys us and destroys everyone around us. So this is a very good point, because I mean, in Lebanon, currently we have a lot of things happening, and there are a lot of people who are doing better than the majority of people who do fall into this guilt feeling. But I think at this point, like you said, putting our skills and our growth into a service, into a better purpose, is not only healing for us, but it will also help the rest of the community.
I would love to hear Donna's. So Donna did that in her context. So us three women are experiencing a lot of things kind of really close to home in a lot of ways, right? Like, even though I'm living in Canada, I mean, home is in Afghanistan. And so Donna did that. Donna put her energy creatively in ask. So I would love for her to share what she did to support her community, because there's a lot of different things happening at this time, right? And so Donna, what did you do to help your community? And if you could give a little bit of context, what's going on in Greece as well.
Sure. Thanks, Sahar. And I just want to commend you on pointing out a few things that, how you deal with survivor's guilt or survival guilt, and also on the simplest act of checking in on loved ones. If you know somebody that is going through a traumatic time right now, because there are so many triggers at this very moment all across the globe. And, we chose to put a spotlight on Afghanistan and send our healing energy and our thoughts to Afghan women and children, because it's a very vulnerable community, and Sahar's story attests to that, and from another perspective. But when we can do the simplest of things, and sometimes the simpler is the difficult, part, because self-care, like you said, can feel very selfish. However, I'll just speak from my perspective, because that's, kind of what brought this whole conversation together, is that, there's so many collapses globally right now, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's government, political, and so all we can do, I know I had some nights where I kind of woke up in shock, because I'm a few hundred miles away from some devastating wildfires going on in southern Greece. And I look out my window and all I see is beauty and peacefulness, whereas 100 miles away, people are suffering and being evacuated from their homes and villages, and losing their homes, losing their estates, losing their life, really, and their safety net. And some of that has been potentially politically, activated and so on. So without getting into that side of the conversation, I think of the people, and to think of people right now suffering and homeless as I'm sleeping in my bed, kind of shocked me. And so what it did was it put me into action. It took me a few days, maybe a week, to really sit with all of it and say, and this is part of how I process trauma or sudden bouts of fear, is to sit with it and let the emotion be with you, because it can be very difficult, and allow the emotion to run through whatever that is, and react as you need to. Like Sahar said, there will be certain mechanisms that we fall prey to, and for some it might be somewhat unhealthy to fall into drugs or alcohol or something else. For others, it may be crying, it may be, like you said, curling up in your bed, it may be, but allow the feelings to come through. That's kind of like the first step. And when we can acknowledge that, what happens is it actually processes much quicker. So try to do that, wherever you're at in the globe right now. And I know there's even a lot of people, without going into that conversation, but panicking about vaccines and what this means for their kids. And I just want to point that out, because we hear you, we are moms and women, and we're all going through this together. I think that's something that we really need to keep pointing out, is that we're all humans on this planet together, and we're all trying to navigate this together. So step one would be acknowledge. Step two would be sit with the feelings, allow them to flow, allow them to process through, however difficult that might feel. And I promise you that they will flow through much quicker than you think. And then what can happen is it clears the space. And when you can clear the space, then you can take action. And so a wonderful idea, a very simple idea, came to me as to what would be something useful right now. And so I had the idea of making hygiene, what I'm calling clean kits, with shampoo and toothbrush and toothpaste and soaps, and basically creating a toiletry bag. And so these will be donations that are matched by my parent company. So I'll mention that when all of it is finalized. I'm in the process of organizing it right now. And so these kits, through a nonprofit organization called Mazimet Atabia, Together for the Kids, is going to take these kits as soon as they're assembled and ready, and I'll keep you guys posted on how you can also contribute. It just takes a couple dollars, literally like $2, to help donate. And those kits will be directly delivered, and I may even drive them down myself to see where, where these kind of headquarters are in Athens. So I know they'll be directly delivered to children and their families who are basically displaced from their homes right now. So it's a small action, but that's just it. I'm one person taking a small action. And so if everyone that is able takes a small action, then they actually add up to big actions. So that's my contribution. When it comes time to our meditation, as I heard Sahar speaking, I had a voice of criticism come in, and I mentioned this on purpose, because we will feel guilt over perhaps being in a better situation than other humans at the moment. And so thinking of offering this meditation, well, is that enough? What is that really, what is that really doing for people right now? But what it can act as is a moment of solace, a moment of peace. And just like the small acts, if we can collect many moments, or as many moments as we can, of solace and peace and stillness, I promise you also that that will help to create a collective whole that is operating not from fear, that is operating from a much more stable base. So that's what we do here at Pranalakshmi and at our podcast, is offering the tidbits of help that can possibly amplify into something something bigger. And someone listening to this may have a really phenomenal idea that can help, a larger population. And so that's what we can do, is just offer the small steps, because we know that small steps add up to really big results.
I love that, Donna. I just also want to contribute to say that supporting other leaders is, your well-being, your wellness, that is activism. Just so, as Donna said, like that meditation, if it gives mental peace and wellness to us, that means that then I'm able to be in operation. If I'm collapsed by the fear and I can't move the energy out of my body and I don't know, I'm inactive. And so it's not about like making sure you're constantly active, but it, as she says, it's huge. It's huge in supporting one another. So it's about a community of wellness and health. And that in of itself is revolutionary, especially at this time on the planet. So, yeah.
Well, I just want to add with everything that you said, that what's important with whatever that we're doing with your coping mechanism, Sahar, with the way you healed yourself, with the way that Donna is contributing, the way that I've been contributing also to the Lebanese society, to the Lebanese community here in Lebanon. I think what we are mainly doing is to keep the vibration of people around us on a higher level, and not let them like drop their vibration, drop their frequency, and kind of operate from a better space, which is really important. And this is how we come together, and this is why we put our hearts into Pranalakshmi and the community that we are building here. I feel right now, although we think it's quite a crazy time and it's quite challenging, and it's for many people it's like the end of the world somehow. I mean, not literally, but for them it's a complete different shift to a complete different and unknown era, and it's devastating for a lot of people. But I feel there is a good thing that is coming out of this. It's a lot of awakening coming out, a lot of truth coming out. And within these truths coming out, there are a lot of people that are coming together, and their bonds have been stronger than ever within the humanity. And I feel this is priceless. And I really have faith in our species that we're going to hold on, and we're going to pass this phase, and there will always be places where we can find peace and where we can nurture the next generation and the next and the next.
And it's what's really needed right now. The word came up in Sahar's sharing, resilience, perseverance, persistence. It's really needed right now. And it's kind of it's like a double, it's like a two-edged sword, I guess, that we need to be as still and stable as possible in our own personal selves and lives and homes, which even there, with everything happening globally, and I know that's so, vague, but there is so much happening in each country, on each continent right now, and that's affecting homes. It's affecting, violence in homes. It's affecting our children, putting them into trauma states. They don't know how to act and react. So really, as adults, whether we're parents or not, as adults, we are parents to all the children on the planet. It's showing resilience. It's showing that you wake up and you keep going every day, even on the bad days, even on the difficult days, that it's okay that you have an off day, because sometimes the body and the mind need that to, like Sahar suggests, sometimes we will be in bed and we won't be able to get up. On that day, think of it not as a relapse or as a going backwards. Actually, think of it as a recharge, because your body systems and your nervous system really needs to take a step back and reset. so that the next day or that afternoon or that evening, you have some energy reserves to give back to your community. And sometimes, that's a big ask for some people. They can't give back to the community. They need to focus on home. They need to focus on feeding their children, feeding themselves. And so that is the give back. I need you healthy. I need my neighbor healthy to take care of themselves. That is the community, right? So when we mention self-care, that is exactly what every single human on the planet needs right now that is able to. Because the more I care for me, the more I have that ability, that resilience, the charge, if I can, to help my neighbor. Otherwise I may be only able to help myself. And I think that's okay right now. We're really like pulling away and kind of getting rid of, on a universal perspective, I feel like fear, shame, guilt, all of that is starting to peel away, because it's the human experience. It's the human experience that really speaks. And we're all going through shifts. We're all going through big emotional upheavals. And it's not every day. It's not every day heavy. We have our light days. And so that's what's going to get us through, is building up the practices, building up those strengthening practices. And, it's very common right now to hear and see also that the vulnerability is strength. I've been saying that for years. It's something that I've known since a child. In our vulnerabilities, in our ability to open up and share that I'm in pain, I'm going through something, I'm suffering right now. That openness is going to it's speeding up right now. The more you open, the more you're welcoming in people that can help you heal, resources, and so on.
We shared, I think earlier in this podcast, like one of the earlier episodes, probably the first, when we said 2021, we were entering into the year of 2021, and now it's like 9 months down the road. And we said things were just going to speed up. Like, I didn't know all of this would have unfolded in the summer, but we said things were going to speed up. And now it's a time where we need all these tools that can be used in our day-to-day lives to be able to kind of create an atmosphere of wellness for us, right? And so we have to be intentional. We have to go look for it. We have to do that work. Like, I'm on a health protocol right now myself personally, just to boost up my, certain things in terms of blood oxygen levels and things like that. And I'm hearing a few other people have these symptoms. So there is a bit of activeness that has to happen with that right now, where you can't just allow it to circumstances or be in your old habits either. That passive kind of flow of, whatever will be. You have to be active to kind of remember your supplements. Like, I trust that everybody will know what's right for their body, or at least, ask the question of the universe and have the answers show up for you. But be very mindful of that your internal world right now, and don't see that as because the thing that I found when people are under guilt and all of that is that they will actually neglect themselves. They will do self-harm. They'll forget to eat. They will, because they feel guilty if they do, but that's not the answer. And especially from an evolution and leadership standpoint, we are in a massive state of transformation. We personally, there's certain people, I think, that were I'm going to catalyze my own transformation. I'm going to go get a coach. I'm going to I need to change my life, this and that. So, but those of us that may have been hiding out from that a little bit, the wave of change has hit us through, a global pandemic and then a lot of other things. So I don't think we can hide from it anymore. There is a level of self-responsibility. I love when Danielle talks about self-responsibility. Sometimes she's like a boot camp coach, because I'm I hate it. But it's the feminine and the masculine, the concept of the energies of how to mix that energy together is compassion, vulnerability, love, openness, peace, all of that. And then on the other side, it is that fortitude, resilience, persistence, action. So it's the marriage of those two, the beautiful harmony of those two, not one or the other, or and I think that's kind of happening collectively. And yeah, Danielle, your self-responsibility.
And I I mean, look at us, look at the three of us. I mean, we kind of connected for a purpose, but that connection became so much stronger in these really difficult times. This is where I feel like you mentioned the word collectivity, and it's been going on my mind for a while. This is our chance through the globe to collectively heal. I mean, this is a one-of-a-kind chance because we've never gone through anything like this where the whole globe was affected. So I think this is where our emotion come in place. We're not on an autopilot anymore. We're questioning life. We're questioning things around us. So you see a lot of people who are numb, and you see a lot of people who are awakening, who are asking really question existentielle. I forgot how you say it in English.
Existential crisis.
Yeah.
It's an existential
Like,
crisis.
who am I? What am I doing? Who are these people? What is happening? And I think really, like, first it starts by this question: who am I? Really, who am I? And many gurus, many spiritual leaders, they've spoken about this, but really, like, the essence of who I am is really who we are, because there is all the eyes combined, we make one. And this is where our soul leaves our body and it just merges with everything else. And this is where we have to awaken and not be afraid anymore.
Yeah, it's so deep what you said, Danielle, about the existential crisis, because I'm having one right now in my life, and I'm okay with it. Like, it's not a crisis as in, because crisis means a fork in the road. It's an opportunity for transformation, right? So personally, I'm in a place where everything that I thought that I was going to be, that I was going to become, all like my motivations, everything that was the foundation of my why has melted away. And it's a very naked, vulnerable place to be. It's literally, you feel naked. You're like, wait. So, one of the books that I listened to recently was called, it's something regarding happiness. We'll link it later, but it was about the neurotransmitters, the different chemicals. So like dopamine, oxytocin, and like, I forget the other two, but the brain. So in that book, they said that the brain is actually from, like, we have a reptilian brain, a mammalian brain, and then the frontal cortex, the human brain. And the cool thing about that, like, it's fascinating. But the cool thing about that is, like, I started to realize, wait, my ancestors are dinosaurs. Like, my ancestors are like, so even this concept that like you're only human, right? Like the ego identity is like, who am I? And like you're like, oh, I'm Afghan, or I'm Canadian, or I'm this or that. Like all of that nation state, like whatever, makes you not identify with other things, and therefore you may not care for those other things or pay attention to it in the same way, right? But I just want to remind people that like our ancestors, all of us, all of the like humans, apparently, like according to like biological evolutionary science, is that we're like from dinosaur times, right? And so I just thought that that was really fascinating, that I think it's a great thing to question and to kind of undo a lot of things that we've held on to as who we are, because that's where a new beginning will show up. That's where something new will be birthed through. And hopefully we get to have a more expansive perspective so that we can then care about like the environment, right? We can then identify with much bigger things than just even, you know, a specific country, like a specific like group of people, like your family, your tribes, like all of that I think is dismantling. But the brain, like the reptilian part of the brain, like that looks like to protect you, it started at a time where it needed to like really be mindful of strangers and like all of that, right? And so now we're in this globalization state where all of that is like melting away. So I think it's fascinating, and I think that there's a lot of joy. Like it's weird for somebody to be like in a state of joy and suffering at the same time, but they're coexisting at the same time all the time.
Precisely. And you know, there's a lot of like energy intuitional type of people that are saying now we're going through a time of ancestral healing, that a lot of this deep emotion that's coming up is coming from that place. So you really, you really hit the nail on the head there. And because of that, it's never been an easier time than now to really connect and find resources. Have you noticed that too? Like, it's become so much easier to find the help and the resources, and to, you mentioned supplements, but it's never been easier to find out protocols. Like, what do I need to do for my body and my healing right now? Because really all of us need to take care of really from the base, right? So how can I take care for my body self? How can I care for my mind self? How can I care for my spirit self? And all of that is changing, and it really is action, and it's changing from the ways of our ancestors. We're really operating on a different level. We can learn from the past, and now we're also learning and operating at different levels. And I just find that fascinating, that it's never been easier to seek counsel and find the answers that we're really looking for, because not only is it within, but I do believe that we are finally connected and collected with the same type of resonance. There's a reason we're humans, and that resonance, it channels through all of us. It's that global mind. So when we learn to tune into it, then we find that if I'm dealing with a personal struggle right now, there's more than 1 million other people on the planet dealing with that particular struggle, which means what? That collectively needs to be healed. And I truly believe the answer and the resources are already there, or they're being created, because we're dealing with those issues. And right now, what I've noticed, and over the last year and a half, is that there's been so many issues coming up, whether it has to do with race or politics or,
forest fires, environmental issues,
environmental, natural disasters, and how we respond to them, because that's kind of the big heated topic here right now, is how, they're being responded to. So all of that existing, and if we finally tune in to what it is that speaks to us on a more than human level, like going just beyond, listening and understanding that on an energetic level, the answers are already there. And so one very simple thing is reminding yourself, like when we tell ourselves to sleep on it, oh, just sleep on it. Well, what is that really telling yourself? That when you calm the nervous system and you relax, then you're better able to handle the situation. And then the answers, they seem to just appear. But what's really happening is you're kind of going into all the memory banks, and you're accessing information out there, and you're pulling into reservoirs that already really exist.
I just want to add something to what you said, Donna, that we have to be very careful, however, to keep ourselves really well grounded in these moments, and really pick and choose when to outsource information, explanations, researches, and really do our homeworks ourselves, because there are a lot of things happening in parallel. There are a lot of informations out there, all of them contradicting each other, and all of these really cloud our minds. And I think the best way to go is really find a holistic way to ground ourselves, to keep our mind focused, and to keep us in a good space where we're not emotionally affected. I mean, we're all full of emotions, but emotions can sometimes work against us and put us in a situation, in a survival mode, and really blind us from the reality out there.
I'm glad you added that. And one thing I've been doing to filter information, and I'm sure you ladies do this too, is how does this piece of information feel? Intuitively, where does it sit with me? And sometimes you need to let it sit for a little while to see if it resonates with you. And that's such a very, it sounds very basic, but at the same time, it's actually quite a unique way of looking at things and seeing if it actually resonates with who you are and how you feel.
And also the
Mhm.
people. This is why I would like to express gratitude to both of you for being connected and really for going through this journey together. I mean, I couldn't have asked for anything better. And I love what we have. And I think this is one of the things that everyone has to look for. Really find your community, strengthen your community, and the like-minded people will come together inevitably and become stronger. So, Donna, your meditation is very much needed right now.
All right, so I'd love everyone to just find a comfortable seat. So wherever you're at, you could be in a chair, you could move to the floor, you could sit with your back upright. So if someone isn't used to sitting without their back against a wall or against a chair, please have that support right now. And really, you know, that word support, that's what this meditation is meant to offer. And it's going to have 3 parts. So we're going to, actually 4, we're going to get grounded in our seat. And so to get grounded means to connect with the energy of the earth. And the earth right now both needs us and is willing to support us. So it's a really important time to get connected with the element of the earth. And the next step will be getting present. And to get present, I love to use breath work. So we'll use some breath work to really tune into the channels of energy right now in our body. And for some of us, this conversation even and the world events I know I'm feeling quite a buzz in my body, a buzz because there is so much happening around us right now. And so especially why we need just moments of clarity and peace and calmness and stability. So we'll go into some breathing work. And after that, I'll teach you a sounding technique that is very simple. In fact, you already do it during the day sometimes without realizing it. And that sounding technique is going to help open up our throat center. And at this time, we need, as Sahar mentioned, activists. We need people to be active and speaking their truth and being able to communicate. So that technique will open up the throat. And lastly, we'll sit in silence. And when we are in silence and stillness, we can most be connected to divine resonance, what the information is that we need from a divine source, from a source that is us and also bigger than us. And that's where ideas can come from. That's where salvation can come from. That's where that sense of inner peace and also connection to the whole can come from. So find that grounded seat for yourself. Maybe you have your palms face down on your lap. Take your shoulders and turn them back and down so that your chest is elevated, your heart is open, your lungs feel more open and expanded. Imagine you could lift your waist and your rib cage up from your hips and pelvis. So lengthening through the spine, lengthening through the rib cage. You really want to start to give your body space to breathe because breath is life and breath is what will help us to activate. So we take the shoulders back and down, we open the chest, we open and expand the rib cage. And then your palms, notice if they want to be upwards, that's helping you to connect with the earth, with the globe, with the universe. And if your palms would like to face downwards, it's a great way to ground into yourself. And then keep lengthening through the spine so much that you lengthen the back of the neck and you're pulling up through the back of the neck and elongating through the crown. And just sit there for a moment and continue to shift in your seat if needed to keep that lengthening happening through the spine and upwards through the crown. And at the same time, feel a rooting and grounding through your seat, as if your tailbone and your glutes and your legs and your feet are really pressing down towards the earth. And so it's this push and pull that's happening, the seat pushing down, the spine pulling upwards at the same time. Wonderful. And you may have already closed your eyes, or you can close them now. Simply noticing your breath. How are you breathing in this moment? Is your breath fast? Does it feel rapid? Maybe you can feel your heartbeat. How does that feel? How does the pace of your breath feel? How does the quality of your breath feel? Is it full or shallow? In panic or in fear, some of you may be breathing through the chest, through the upper part of the chest. And so we want to start to focus that downwards into the belly. The more we can pull down towards our center of our body, the center of the earth, that will really help to weight us down into the safety and the security of the earth. So we want to bring the breath down. And now as you breathe, and some of you may wish to place your hands to your belly, start to inhale and expand the belly and expand the rib cage. So you're taking the breath away, down from the chest, and you're actually inhaling through the belly. And exhale as you press the belly in and back. And those first few breaths may feel really good, exhaling through the mouth. And really empty out. So you're breathing in, keep the shoulders down, keep the chest pressed down, and expand the belly. And as you exhale, deflate through the belly. Doing that a few more times. Really cleansing and clearing, especially through your out breath. So we're breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And those of you at home, you can make as much sound as you want here, because you may need to sigh, you may need to make some noise as you release. The other thing I'm feeling for some of us, like I mentioned, you might have a lot of energy running through the body, so you may need to shake it out. You may need to shake your hands and shake your arms, and know that that's okay. It's actually a really good practice, and that's what animals do. So they shake out their nerves and their fears anytime they've been activated into that state of stress. So feel free to shake, and you may need to shake the whole body. Some of you may need to get up and stand and shake and breathe and really focus on the exhalation, because that's the cleansing part. That's the releasing part. Good. And now I'd like you to take the breath really quiet and inwards. And what I mean by that is try to breathe in and out through the nose now. If you can, just nostril breathing. And as you breathe through the nostrils, I'd like you to count and make it very simple. Count to 2 as you breathe in, count to 2 as you breathe out. Count to 2 as you breathe in, count to 2 as you breathe out. And then move up. Count to 3 as you breathe in. Count to 3 as you breathe out. You're counting really slowly, because we want to take the rhythm down now. We want to slow down the rate of the breath. So the slower the rate of the breath, the slower the heart rate. So we tame that stress response, and we actually start to bring ourselves into a much more relaxed state, feeling safer, feeling more at peace and at home with ourselves. And then some of you might breathe in for 4, and then breathe out for 4. And stay with that for just a few more moments. See if you can focus the breath just into the belly and the rib cage. So you're bringing the breath down and away from the chest, away from the shoulders, and expanding through the center of the body. And some of you may even be able to expand beyond the body. So you might breathe in and expand into the space just around your body or your aura, and you may be able to go further than that. And that's one of the ways that we can take our energy and affect other people in our lives, is by creating that sense of peace within, and it can actually radiate out to our environment, our friends, and our family. Good. And now going into the sounding for the throat is quite simple. I want you to relax your tongue. Just let your tongue fall really heavy to the base of your throat, as if it's kind of falling down. And open up the throat. So by relaxing the tongue, you're relaxing the jaw, your mouth is closed. But if your lips part slightly, that's okay. Let everything just kind of open up inside your mouth and throat like a cave. And then as we exhale, we're going to make a very deep and full humming sound. So I'll demonstrate one, and then I just want you to join in, and I'll notice our time. So we'll do that for about 30 seconds, and we'll just hum. And when we're finished there, you'll notice I will stop, and we'll rest in silence for another 30 seconds. So your eyes are closed. I'll begin. Feel free to remain in this silent space for as long as you need. And if you'd like to come back to the humming sound, you may repeat that also for another 3 to 5 rounds, and simply notice how it really brings your energy into more of a state of stillness. So it's quite interesting that the vibration and sound that we make can also bring us into stillness. This meditation will be extracted, and you can use it at any time when you feel the need to clear your communication center, to clear the throat, and to find that place of peace and stillness and grounding. Thank you.